Hello, and welcome to a surprise episode of Remember the Film. I'm Jeff Grizz Ullrich, and I am joined as usual with our MCU insider Hugo Pinai. How are you today,
Hello, yeah,
Hugo?
that's me. I'm the number one MCU insider in Italy. That's what I'm known for. Yeah, doing great. What
Of
about you?
course, I'm doing great, but of course I'm calling you an MCU insider because you had a unique opportunity here this
That is
last
true.
week. And what was that, Hugo? What did you get to do?
So basically, Eternals, the latest MCU movie coming out. I think it comes out in 10 days or something, in the fourth or the third or here in Europe. But had its European premiere at the Rome Film Festival. And Rome is a city where I'm currently studying in, as you can tell by this very barren room where I'm currently sitting in. It's a student apartment, so it's kind of shitty, but we'll get over that. And so basically, I managed to get a ticket for the premiere, and I got to see the movie introduced by Chloe Zhao, the director, and part of the cast, which was exciting. Um, and yeah, and so basically, I was able to see this movie 10 days before most people. It was I think it was the first showing of the film in the world that had just regular people who
Yeah,
could
just
purchase a ticket,
general public could attend.
because I believe it did premiere like 5 days before I saw it in Los Angeles, but
Like
it was all
they did their
press.
usual premiere, which is like
Yeah,
for the press and for
it was
that's where
all
they do the
press. Yeah.
red carpet. That's where they do all that
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, yeah, yeah. They
And
also did a red carpet here, though,
did they really?
which is interesting. Yeah, they did. There's a red carpet for every movie that comes to the Rome Film Festival that's premiering here in Europe. So, and which is interesting because the movie was supposed to start at 8 o'clock, and it actually started like, I don't know, 35 minutes late because Angelina Jolie decided to like spend 40 minutes on the red carpet. Just she was incredibly generous with her time. She just spoke to every single person that was there. She took a photo with every single person that was there. She signed stuff for everyone. So everybody else was just like kind of walking by, saying hello, talking like for 5 minutes to the press, and then going inside the theater. And she just spent like 35 minutes on the red carpet,
Well, that's
which was
pretty
fun.
cool.
Yeah, so basically they told us to get there like 45 minutes before the showing was supposed to start, and then they quickly funneled us into the theater, which was packed, by the way, with a lot of people. It was great. Um, you had to show, by the way, you had to show proof of vaccination and wear a mask at all times, so it was safe in that way.
Yes, worth it for
Um,
a special premiere event like this.
yeah, that's good. It's good. Yeah, very important. Um, so, and they put us in, sat us inside, and from there on the big screen they projected the red carpet. So we were seeing all the interviews, and we were seeing the actors coming in, and all that stuff.
So
And
Hugo,
then they
they
came
didn't
out.
let you stand along the red carpet.
No, they did not do that. They didn't let us do that, which is interesting. The 20 euros that I paid for should have given me that
Yeah,
opportunity,
as
but
well.
whatever.
Especially you're Hugo Pinai from Remember the
I mean,
Film.
yeah, I remember the film, number one journalist at the event. Yeah, it's weird that they didn't give me a press pass, to be
That's so
honest.
crazy.
But yeah, so Chloe Zhao came out. She introduced the cast. Not everyone, only four of them were there. Gemma Chan, who is, well, she's basically the POV character in the movie. Obviously it's an ensemble piece with a lot of characters, but I would say the main character is definitely Gemma Chan in it. And then
And who
Kit
does she
Harrington
play?
was there. She plays one of the Eternals. Their names are wild. Cersei, her name is,
Okay, I thought
I
that was
believe.
correct.
Yeah, Cersei.
So that actually
Um,
brings me to one of my first questions. If I can jump on this real quick, Hugo.
do it, yeah.
One of my questions for you is how much did you know about the Eternals before going to see this movie?
Mm, nothing. Nothing at all.
And
This was like Guardians of the Galaxy for me, where I
okay,
just
well,
didn't.
so like Guardians of the Galaxy, I had actually read some Guardians of the Galaxy comics before going to see Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm
Mhm.
a bit of a comic book fan, not like
Yeah,
an expert or anything, but I've read a fair bit, and I have never read anything about the Eternals. So
yeah.
so I
So
think this is a real
it's one
test
of
for the
those.
MCU. If this
It's one of
movie can
those
be a
blank
success.
slates. It's one of those blank slates where they can do something interesting with it, I suppose, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
because well, it's like similar to Guardians of the Galaxy, the majority of people aren't going to be familiar with these characters,
mhm.
so it's a chance for them to introduce them to a new audience. People like you said, blank slate. So this is
Yeah,
another good test, like I was saying, for the MCU to show that this franchise can last beyond the the Thanos story arc
yeah,
by
and also just
launching something new here.
the more well-known characters, you know, like the introducing things that are much nicher in the comic books, but I feel like the built-in audience allows them to create these, like, to use these characters and sort of make them whatever they want to be because they don't have too much baggage that comes with them. um so yeah, I
Now we
hadn't.
say that, but I have definitely seen comments on like posts on Facebook, like marketing
Oh,
posts
I
from
mean,
them. People are like, I can't believe they changed the gender of so and so. Well,
whatever, like,
Gilgamesh
that's
isn't supposed to be Asian. That's those
yeah,
comments are always going to be around, and it's unfortunate that we're going to have to deal with that
it's
in fandoms forever. But
it's that will always happen, but I don't think. I mean, I'm sure it's a small minority of the actual audience.
and I'm hoping that it's going to be a smaller amount of comments like that in comparison to
Yeah,
the
for sure.
other movies in the franchise. Because if they had done that with a more well-known character, I bet there'd be even
Yeah,
more angry people.
yeah.
Um,
I guess I'm um, lucky enough that I haven't been really following discourse online too much. The movie hasn't come out yet, so I guess that there just hasn't been a lot of it, and everything that I've been following is from people who've already seen the movie, um, like myself. Like I've been seeing. It's weird because I went on Letterboxd and posted my review, and I looked at all the recent reviews, and it was just a bunch of Italian people who'd seen the movie in Rome. So I'm sure there's like about 100 reviews in there of just people who got to see it with me,
and
which was a
just to
weird
clarify,
thing.
normally when you see movies in Italy, they're almost always dubbed into Italian, correct?
Um, well, yes, generally the vast majority of screenings are dubbed, but
But this one,
I usually seek out the English version,
right?
so which often means that I see it either in the second week, or if I'm in Rome, I can find a theater that's showing it in
But
English.
this
So
one was in English, correct?
this one was in English, yeah, absolutely. Italian subtitles, which were actually really funny subtitles. There were moments where the subtitles were just kind of wacky and weird, and I don't know what they did with it, but people sort of laughed at them. But yeah, the movie was in English, thankfully, which was great. So yeah, I don't know. Getting
Well,
into
so,
the
I was
movie,
gonna say I have a bunch of questions that I wrote for you.
shoot, yeah, go for the.
So
I'll just give my basic thoughts
that was the first
before, maybe.
question: is what did you
Okay.
think? But first,
So yeah, I
I do
think
want to apologize to anyone who's watching the video.
yeah,
Hugo's coming from his room in Rome at
yeah,
his university, and I am coming from my office at work, which is why there's blinding light behind me. There's not a whole lot I can do about that, unfortunately. So
yeah.
apologies.
But at least I have a Star Wars poster.
Yeah, at least there's that.
There
So
you go.
Hugo, what did you think about the
Um,
Eternals?
I
And this is
overall
all
I
going to be
thought
spoiler free. All spoiler
spoiler free,
free.
absolutely. No, yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm definitely not getting into any story beyond what's been shown in the trailers, and even then, I'm just going to say, oh, the Eternals and the Deviants. That's as much as I'm going to say about the story, really. Um, so, um, I really enjoyed the movie overall. I really like it, and it's a movie that I think, seeing it again, I'm going to enjoy it more. And even just talking about it and thinking about it in these past few days, it's been growing on me steadily. I'm actually quite confused at the reviews. I feel like the movie is different from a lot of Marvel movies, and maybe the expectations that people go into these movies sort of clashed with what we got. Um, it's a movie that isn't as continuously action heavy as most Marvel movies. It's very much focused on the characters, and everything that has to do with the characters in this movie is really, really good. Like all nine of the Eternals are, despite me not being able to remember their names, but just because their names are absurd, um, they are very distinct characters. They have their own opinions, they have their own arcs. They have conflict within each other. They have different relationships with different Eternals. There are different pairings, and it's it's really, really well made. Like the movie overall is about this meditation on whether sort of like what's humanity's place in the universe. Is life worth saving? Is or do the end justify the means? Is there a greater good that you can decide to maybe sacrifice life for? Are we supposed to help humanity? Are we not supposed to help it? That's what the movie is. And the way that it deals with those themes is by having different Eternals have different opinions on that, and you see sort of conflict between them that isn't necessarily conflict in the sense of we're going to get into like a quippy dick measuring contest, which is what we may have gotten in other Marvel movies. It's like very earnest people who really care about each other, just talking and having not necessarily philosophical conversations, but like as if me and you were talking about politics and having a slight disagreement and just like getting into the minutia of what our opinions are and how they differ and how we may find a common middle
Common ground.
ground.
Yeah.
And all of that stuff is so good. The cinematography is some of the best cinematography in the MCU. For me, you can really tell this movie was done by Chloe Zhao. If you've seen Nomadland,
That was actually one of my next questions was, does Chloe Zhao's style come through in this movie?
absolutely, absolutely, especially when it comes to character moments, character interactions, their relationships, um, the emotions that these actors are portraying, and the cinematography. Like her style in the way she shoots things and the way it's very interesting because if you look at Nomadland, if you look at this movie, in many ways they look similar. Because whenever there's a character moment, it really puts the character at in the middle of the frame. It's a very close up on them. The camera is usually moving very slowly around them, maybe, and then it puts them in these massive shots and incredibly beautiful vistas. And
Oh, I'm a
that
sucker for
contrast.
vistas.
Oh man, that constant back and forth between those two different types of shots is very much, I think, her trademark stylistically, and it comes through in the movie. Um, Also, like vast majority of this is shot on location, and man, can you tell the difference between a lot of Marvel movies? Like, and this, spoilers. This is not my favorite Marvel movie or anything. Like, there's a lot of them that I like more. But in terms just of visuals, this movie pops out because you can tell these places are real. Like they go to this wild forest in India and it looks like a wild, and you can tell it's a real place,
So
and that
that
really
actually
comes
brings me
through.
to one of my questions was a frequent complaint in Marvel movies is that it turns into just CGI mess,
Mhm.
right? A lot of
Yeah.
CGI all the time. Uh, is that an issue with this one? We got a lot of like a whole bunch of super powered individuals with a variety of powers that we have
It,
not seen in the MCU yet. Is it a CGI
okay. So
madhouse?
it overall, like the vast majority of the movie's time is spent on character interaction, character building. It's spent on sort of their arcs, and that's the strongest suit of the film. Where I do think the film has a bit of a problem is with some of the action parts. Like whenever it goes into action, it that sort of meditative, slower pace just sort of goes away. And the deviants, if you've seen them in the trailer, they're just kind of monsters for them to fight
I was gonna say
because this is a very
I was getting
slow
sort of
paced
a
movie.
Transformers vibe, like where you can't
Yeah,
like they're not
to
they're
be
not
honest,
distinct.
they're not very good. Like they're just like creepy monsters that sometimes show up because like the movie has only been a talkie for 35 minutes and so we need an action scene now. It feels very much like that. It feels like almost like Chloe Zhao is making a movie about these characters, and then after she's already developed all her ideas, oh, we need an action scene here, we need an action scene here, and we need an action scene there, because otherwise the movie is not an action movie, and that comes with the MCU for
There does
better or for
need to be
worse.
some action in an MCU movie.
Yes, it there really does, and I don't think they had the most interesting ideas with the action. It doesn't stand out in any way. It's sort of there because it has to be there, and I think that's the most critical part of the movie. Um, and also, like the overall threat. that the Eternals are faced with, which again I will not get into any details, sort of feels a bit much, and it feels a little at odds with the more um, closer emotional character focus of most of the movie.
Okay.
But I feel like watching this movie again, you'll sort of your eyes will sort of glaze over during the action sequences, and you'll enjoy the conversations and the themes of the movie more. Which is why, again, for me, thinking about what sticks with me of the movie is stuff that I really loved, and so which is why it's growing on me, as I said. Also, on another note, it's a film that the marketing and some of the interviews that they've been doing, they've been talking a lot about how inclusive the film is, how diverse the film is, and again, without going into any details, it really does that stuff really well. It feels like um, whenever there's an inclusive or diverse element in the movie, it never feels like, oh, that's the entire character of this character. And at the same time, it's not blink and you miss it. It's very much part of their character, while also not reducing them to like a stereotype.
Right.
So it the diversity is perfectly encapsulated in the movie. One of the themes of the movie is, how all our differences make us stronger together, more or less. And it does that subtly also with how diverse this cast is, and they all get to shine. They all, again, as
And
I
that was
said,
that
they
was going
all
to be
really
my
get
next
their
question
own
for you.
personality and identity. Yeah.
With a huge cast here, like you said, there's 9/10 Eternals. So because one thing I do know about them from the comics is that one of the characters, Gilgamesh, had broken away from the Eternals after their
Hmm.
time on Earth had begun. So you have these at least 10 characters there. Plus you got Kit Harington.
Yeah,
Uh,
I counted it wrong, by the way. It is 10.
okay, so I
I
wasn't
said
sure if you were
9.
counting 9 because Gilgamesh
No, no,
is
no, 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 no.
okay.
I'm just. It is 10. I just got the number wrong.
Okay, so
What
10.
I feel like there's one of them that has a smaller role,
But so there's
but it
you got the
but there
10
are 10
Eternals
characters. Yeah.
and Kit Harrington's character, uh,
Yes.
plus the deviants and all that stuff. So there's a very large cast for this film.
Yes.
Does everybody get a moment to shine?
Yeah. It is some more than others, obviously. Like some of the characters are main, I think, characters within the Eternals, but every character has a role that matters. Every character has a distinct point of view that comes through in the movie, and that is integral to what the movie is doing, and the story that it's telling. And it it actually really surprised me in that way, because I thought, oh, when the movie begins, you very much start from the point of view of Gemma Chan's character, and I thought, oh, the movie's going to follow her, and the other Eternals are sort of going to be
More
there,
ancillary.
but yeah, but not really important. And that's not the case at all. They all have they all have an arc. They all have an emotional moment that matters. They all have, again, as I said, a distinct point of view and opinion that matters,
Well, so that
which
that
I thought
sounds cool.
is where the biggest success of the
And
movie.
that was my biggest worry going in.
Mm.
This all goes back to Spider-Man 3 when they
Yeah.
had too many villains and they had and it wasn't and that was a much smaller cast than this one, but it was to the
Mhm.
point that not everybody got the time that those characters deserved. So you feel like
That's
that
true.
these characters, they do a pretty good job of
The,
giving them good
the
opportunities to show their worth in the movie.
Yes, but it's interesting that you bring up Spider-Man 3, because in the same way here, the villain side is just not remotely as interesting as the Eternals.
Okay.
So it's there are moments of visual where what is happening, the threat that they are facing visually, is so cool and weird and out there, and I really appreciated that. But it's never really developed in a way that makes it feel as meaningful as our protagonist and their it's very much, if you go into this movie expecting to see a talkie where there are interesting characters in a big sci-fi world and story, it's a really good. I think you're gonna like the movie.
So it's
If you go in
closer to an emotional
expecting,
drama than it is to a full-on action film.
well, I mean, yes, I think especially because it's sort of a no, it's definitely like uh, it's a very much a science fiction epic,
Okay.
set on Earth, but it's very sci-fi. Um, and in that way, I enjoyed it as sort of this big sci-fi drama epic that is wrestling with some interesting ideas and is visually beautiful. But it sort of feels like there are some elements that are just obligatory for a Marvel movie, and they're in this movie, but they don't really gel completely with what are the best parts of it.
Do you think you'd wish that they wouldn't shoehorn those MCU elements into this movie? Would it have been better without it, or did
It
it still need those things?
I don't know. I don't completely know how to answer that question because it is a fundamentally different like the so the threat and the villain side is still a driving force for the story. So it they
And it
would
should
have
be.
to change the overall story.
Right.
But in terms of how the best elements of the movie work, I do feel like some of that stuff is sort of whatever it happens and I'm like, okay, sure, but I don't really care about this. Can we go back to the characters? And that's a feeling that I don't know if is a good or a bad thing for a sci-fi adventure film. And I think that's part of the reason why the reception has been more mixed than most Marvel movies, because like the Marvel movies have a formula and they can get a bit formulaic, but that formula works. And if you're evaluating them in terms of a Rotten Tomatoes score, if that formula is good and the movie is good, it's going to get a really high score because most reviewers are at least going to have a positive review of the movie. I feel like this movie is a bit more out there, and maybe the reaction is a bit more split because of that. But
Okay.
for me, again, I appreciated it
Were there any
quite a lot.
standout performances?
Oh, look, the main cast is really good. I will say Brian Tyree Henry, who plays Fastos. You may know him from he's a major character in Atlanta. That's where
Mm-hmm.
I knew him from. He's fantastic. Salma Hayek. Oh God, she has some of the best emotional scenes. She despite not being in the movie that much compared to the other characters. She has some of the standout scenes. Gemma Chan as our point of view character, another actor who does a fantastic job. If you remember her from maybe Crazy Rich Asians,
Crazy
she
Rich
was great in
Asians,
that. And
fantastic.
here she is the. I mean, obviously it's a big cast, but she is the protagonist, and she's really good in it. And I will say, Angelina Jolie, who is the kind of larger than life figure who could decide, oh, I'm either going to be the protagonist or I'm not going to be in the movie, or in reverse, she could say, I'm going to be in the movie, but give me a small role. I'll just show up and do my few scenes and then leave. She's she's in the whole movie. She's never the main character of the movie, but she's a big part of it, and
So
she as well has some really emotional moments that I think she nails.
okay, so I was gonna ask, does she, because we said like Angelina Jolie is one of those actresses that is just
Hmm.
so well known and so
Yeah.
identifiable that she, even in any scene that she's in, I'm worried that the attention's gonna get drawn to her automatically. They found a good balance.
No, I think she fits into the movie perfectly because again, it's difficult to talk about it, but they put her in the movie in a way that she gets to have the spotlight for some really great moments without having to be the main focus at all times.
Very cool.
Um, and it's good. And also, Kumail is hilarious.
Okay, so
I
that
mean,
that was my
he can
next
do no wrong.
question. Was like, Camille Nanjiani. The internet was temporarily broken when pictures first came out of him like in shape for this role, right? Because
But yeah,
this Camille
he's
is
big.
he's a comedian, like and uh,
Yeah.
before this role, not exactly like a buff guy, but he did it for this role. And so I was curious, was his role going to be, was it still going to be funny, or was this going to be a break from his comedic norms?
He's he's hilarious.
Good.
He's
I
really
love I
funny.
love Kumail Nanjiani. So
He's like he's the funniest character in the movie, and he has I won't talk about it, but he's funny. Like the biggest comedic element of the film is it revolves around his character.
Excellent.
Um, Although I mean, there's comedy throughout. It's fun because it's the sort of comedy where it's very much comes from the fact that these characters know each other and care about each other so much that they have in jokes, they make fun of each other in ways that feel um, familiar, and you know, sometimes I feel like some of the comedy is a little bit okay, yeah, that's funny. You're sort of breaking the fourth wall a little too much for me. There's two things specifically that I noticed in the movie where I was like, okay, wait, that's a little tongue in cheek that I didn't love. But I mean, it's not terrible, but I was like, okay, like I'll definitely message you about this. There's those few moments when you get to see the movie. I don't want to spoil.
Excellent. So the one of my last questions I had prepared was regarding the humor of this movie. The MCU is well known for its quips. The characters are all very quippy, very clever,
Yeah.
and some people have grown tired of that. I still always love it because I love when characters are on the spot,
Mhm.
smart sounding characters. Uh, does this continue that trend with its comedy, or do they do anything new with the humor, or does it try to do the old stuff and it just falls short?
No, I mean it sort of continues the fact that there are quips and there are funny little comebacks that don't really add anything to the overall narrative. They're just there because they're fun. But I do think the not all the characters are quipping. Not all the characters are even participating in the comedy side of the movie. Some of them are more stoic and quiet. Some of them have, I feel like they have different senses of humor. There's a character that feels like he's a little. You're always concerned. Is he a little slimy, or is he a good guy? Like it's unclear where he's coming from, but that creates humor. Kumail is really goofy in a way that I don't think necessarily Marvel characters have that kind. Like the quippiness in Marvel is never. Um, I don't know how to explain
It's
it.
not usually silly. It's
No,
clever.
yeah, the person quipping comes off smart
He's
and
a cool
clever.
guy.
Yeah, he's a cool dude, but
Iron Man, when he makes his clever remarks, it's
yeah,
to show how cool he is, and I love
exactly. And
it.
Kumail is doing Kumail comedy, so he's silly, he's quirky, he's really strange at times, but in ways
It's
that
very fun.
are really humorous. Yeah, I liked it a lot. Yeah.
Very cool. I have one last question for you, but before I ask this, did you have any last thoughts that you wanted to share about the movie?
Uh, No, I think I talked about the diversity thing that I didn't want to forget. I think just Chloe Zhao. I hope this opens doors for her to do whatever she wants because I really think she has an eye for. I think she has an eye for cinema on just a visual standpoint. I think the fact that she was able to come into this series having just directed a few very critically acclaimed and successful indie movies, and she came in and she managed to, convince this massive franchise to let her, oh, look, I want to go on all these locations and shoot there. Otherwise, I'm not going to do it, is awesome
Excellent.
for me.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, the doors were already opening for her in some ways because of
Absolutely.
her success, but I think
Yeah, she just won an Oscar.
what this movie can do for her, is really illustrate her versatility,
Mhm.
and so that she
Yeah.
doesn't get pigeonholed into a certain type of film. Sort of like how Denis Villeneuve has shown some great versatility
Yeah.
in the sort of movies he can do. So uh, I really, I mean, I liked No Man's Land quite a lot, and
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to seeing this. But my last question for you, Hugo, is where does this movie fall in your ranking of MCU movies? I know you love to rank things, so I know you've already done it. Where is it in your rankings?
Of course it does. It's for me, it is just outside of my top 10,
Okay.
which so I have it at number 11 right now, which I feel like, um, considering the fact that a lot of the movies that are in the top 10 are movies that, I mean, I don't know, I was younger when they came out. I've seen them all several times and I have a relationship to them. Um, the fact this movie is coming out and I know nothing about it and there's new characters that I've never heard of before, and that I have some clear criticisms of this movie that maybe the ones in the top 10 I don't. I think the movies in my top 10, what they are trying to do, they achieve more of it. In If you were to make a percentage, like, they achieve more of what they're trying to do than this movie does, because I
Okay.
do think the villain side is just uninteresting to me, and it feels like it's just there for the sake, because it's a Marvel movie, so we have to have, a threat and some CGI monsters to fight, and I really did not care about it when it was happening. So that's a big point. But despite that, I feel like the highs of this movie are some of the highest highs in the whole series for me. And again, I do think seeing it more times and over time, it might even creep up on my list.
Well, I'm greatly looking forward to it myself. With it finally opening in the United States here soon. I intend to see it opening weekend, if not opening night, and so then I'll be able to share with you my thoughts. But if you wanted to share your thoughts with Hugo when you finally get around to seeing the movie yourself, our dear listeners and viewers, where can they find you, Hugo, to share those thoughts?
Oh, you can find me on Letterboxd, where my review for the Eternals has gotten 10 likes, which that usually doesn't happen on Letterboxd. But
Yeah,
I was
that's
like,
pretty
oh,
good. That's a pretty
cool.
good
I
number of
guess
likes for
there
a
aren't many
review.
people who've seen this movie, so that makes sense. So hey, if you want to go check out my review and give me a like, that'll be fun. I don't know. But yeah, follow me on Letterboxd at Hugo Pinai. You can find me on Twitter at Hugo_Pinai, and you can find me on Remember the Film every week.
Yes, and you can find me on twitch.tv/goodgamegrizz. And frankly, you can find me just about anywhere at goodgamegrizz, including
Yeah.
Letterboxd, where you can see all my reviews and things. And our usual third co-host, Josh Bradley, he couldn't be with us today because we are recording during the week at unusual hours. And also, he hasn't seen the movie either, so it just would have been him and I both asking Hugo questions. But you can find him on Twitter at the Sloop Josh B. Uh, and so I thought we'd lost Hugo there. So yeah, so you can find us on YouTube at Remember the Film, as well as on podcast services, on basically all of them. Remember the Film, and also follow us on Twitter at RTF_pod. And we hope that you will join us for our next episode, which should be coming here this next weekend. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel so that you can go back and watch all the other movies we've talked about and watch those episodes and give us your thoughts on that. So until next time, thank you so much for joining us, and just have the best week of your life, everybody. Bye bye.
Bye.